Right now, on Close Up with The Hollywood Reporter.
I could not wait to see Prometheus. And I've heard you're going to do Blade Runner sequel. Yes!
Yeah. I'm going to shoot a horse. Where I put the camera? They are very big. If I could, I cut the hair of the rider. Literally, I was having...
I like having that dream that I want to do that is maybe unattainable. If we capture as much of it as we can, we're fortunate. It's magic.
We'll hear from the directors behind the year's most acclaimed films. Quentin Tarantino, The Hateful Eight. David O. Russell, Joy. Danny Boyle, Steve Jobs. Tom Hooper, The Danish Girl. Alejandro González Iñárritu, The Revenant. Ridley Scott, The Martian. Hello and welcome to Close Up with The Hollywood Reporter. I'm Stephen Galloway, Executive Editor of Features, and let's get started. Someone will ask you, what is the biggest challenge facing film today?
I think there's some philosophical problems with film today, but what exactly do you mean?
What do you mean by philosophical problems?
You mean bad stories?
No, I guess I mean, look, I guess where I'm coming from is this, to some degree or another, is I don't know if we're giving people enough reason to leave their house and go to the movies. Now, I actually do, and I'm not trying to be a broken record, I actually do think the digital production, the digital shooting, and the digital projection has a whole lot to do with that because, well, if we're just watching a DVD, I could watch that at home. Frankly, to tell you the truth, a lot of films that 10 years ago I would have actually went out to the theaters and watched and saw, I can wait for them to get to the cable channels. I can wait for them to get to the movie channel. I can wait for them to get to Showtime Extreme or HBO. And I really feel no loss. And I'm watching them 6 or 7 months later, and I'm perfectly enjoying them. But I didn't really miss that much.
I agree. I agree with you. And what you're saying is something that the other day I was talking, that I think that independent filmmaking, in a way, has transported to TV. So that TV now is the home to good independent filmmaker. There's great stories, great things. And in a way, the screens are now full of films that look like TV, just in a big screen. So there is no revelation, there's no mystery. As you said, that why I'm gonna pay that? And I have an 18-year-old son who's, in a way, I learn from him what he's getting from the world. And
what have you learned from him?
That what Quentin is saying, that to make him go to a cinema, he has to have a big reason, because almost everything he can find accessible immediately in home. You know what I mean? So there has to be a huge kind of thing, something that will. That's what he said. I need the mystery of it.
I think I'm going to just say it, okay? I think the bar is lower because there are way too many films being made. And therefore, I think there's a lot of directors who maybe there's too many in the field. And therefore, I think the general quality, I tried to flick through, I came in late last night, try to flick through on a big digital screen what there is to watch. And what there is to watch is anything significant doesn't go on there yet.
What's the last great film you saw?
On TV?
Anywhere.
Funnily enough, I saw a very, very good film last night, and I can't remember her bloody name. But it was a very, very well done film about a woman who, great comedian, now actress, excellent.
Oh, the Sarah Silverman movie? I haven't seen it, but I just heard about it.
It's excellent. And
made
so all
on a
this big
$500,000 budget.
Yeah, how much?
$500,000.
Yes, all this big brouhaha and all these flashy movies with lots of digital effects and all that shit. This film, and when you watch a film, I'm either held immediately. It's like great writers. When you're on a page with a great writer, within half a page, you know who you're with normally, right? With a film, you know pretty well almost immediately whether you're going to stay or not. And I was right there through this. Who's the director? Sarah Silverman was absolutely excellent. Should be one of the people included in this year's nominees.
Is this a great era of film, David?
Fantastic.
I think it's a fantastic year for film, yes. I'm very happy to be at this table with all these people.
But you know what, because it's pushed the envelope, what you're saying is there's an inherent anxiety of any serious filmmaker. So what it's doing is forcing the standard. It's raising the bar.
Yes.
Which is good.
But you just said the bar had been lowered.
I did, but when you see that we had 2 years ago a terrible year. Was it a terrible year? I can't remember. Anyway, 3 years, whatever it was. Okay, you won 2 years ago. Shit, sorry about that. Some of there was a terrible year, like three years ago. It was really raining. It felt depressing, and I think it had an effect on any filmmaker who is serious about what he's doing. It affected things in a good way. It's pushed it up.
Danny, what's the biggest problem for you facing film today?
Well, I suppose we've just come off a bruising kind of experience with Steve Jobs trying to open it out much wider in America. So we've kind of failed really to reach that widest audience. And I think probably we all believe in that you should reach that widest audience because this is not a club.
We're bums on seats. If we're not,
it's
we're dead.
like it started as its origins are kind of like ordinary people at the end of a tough week. They just want to go and lose themselves in some extraordinary idea or image or creation. So I suppose that's what I'm thinking about at the moment is how do you reach that audience? And maybe they are staying at home, watching it on their boxes.
But you just took a key reason for it, though, because I've been saying this since the 80s when movie ticket prices, they were $5 forever in America. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they started moving up to $6.50 and $7 and $7.25 and $7.50 and all that stuff. The key to what you're saying is this is a working man's art form. Yeah. It's not opera, no, it's not theater, it's not going to a big concert. It was the idea was that anybody could go and see a movie. That was one of the reasons why movies flourished in the 30s, and it's not anymore. No. We have priced them out until now it's a deal. All right?
But I don't think it's just pricing out. I think you've got to keep up the standard. And when the standard, how many movies are made a year globally?
Well, thousands, but not all get distributed.
Just out of the United States, what do we make a year?
900 and 1,000?
Yeah, well, that's probably 500 too many. So, I'm serious. I mean, you just run out of options and ideas and...
Tom, do you think it's the working man's medium? Those aren't your films.
Yours aren't, Tom. Yours are very highbrow.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like...
Ridley just called
Danny,
you highbrow, is that true?
Tom, you are highbrow. Dude.
I hope my numbers of the last 2 films defend me against that. No, I mean, I've always felt that I make films for audiences. I mean, I really don't make them for myself because by the time you've finished a film, you've watched it so many hundreds of times that the idea that you would have made it for yourself. I mean, you by that point, you're doing anything you can to try to re-experience your film with the freshness of a new viewer, and you're trying to get back to that. For me, I've always made it for the audience and not for myself.
Alejandro,
I don't ever do that. I only make it for me.
Alejandro, who are you making your films for?
You make it for you, don't you?
Well, I think as a species, we have to look at each other. I think if tomorrow atomic bomb finish the humanity and I'm the only one staying alive, do I will make a film to see myself? I don't think so. You know what I mean? I think the bottom line, we are made to communicate and to express. That's what film is about. It's to share, the need to share, to express.
Let's say that atomic bomb goes off. You've got a time capsule. You're going to put one moment in film, in the history of film, in that time capsule for the future alien races. What moment in film would you choose?
Oh, it's the bone, isn't it, in 2001? It's that cut, isn't it? From the bone to the spaceship.
Maybe the best edit in history.
Yeah, there you go. That says something about us.
You mean if there's the last film?
Absolutely. It's one film we're going to put in that time capsule.
Muriel's
one
Wedding.
Moment. Muriel's Wedding?
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen it 6 times.
Have you really?
Fantastic.
Quentin?
I would, frankly, to tell you the truth, I would probably take a really I'm not going to pick out which one right now, but I would probably take a really magnificent cinematic action scene. You know, one of the really great action scenes of all time. I'm not going to go through that because I'm sure I won't like pressured what I chose. But okay, I will. Okay, the final climax of Jackie Chan's Police Story 3. That is directed by Stanley Tong. Yeah, that is a sequence that that aliens would watch and be amazed at what they saw. All right, and I could go for some more slickly made action scenes, and that could work too, but that would be a thing of what cinema could do. That could actually give you an understanding of cinema in all of its bells and whistles and movement.
There's that Nick Park, the climax of Wrong Trousers,
That action
Yes.
that's one of the greatest
Yes.
action sequences I've ever seen.
I used that when I made Three Kings.
Yeah?
The rhythm of it. I just love watching the rhythm of it. I love
As they
watching
build the train
the way
track.
they cut it, the way they cut the whole thing. So when I thought with the chase sequences leaving Three Kings, I wanted them to have that propulsive quality of leaving a village, a missile being fired at them. They're talking to each other in the car. It's just one. That's a fantastic. I watched it many times. It's
Do you
Wallace and
watch
Gromit.
other films
Wallace and Gromit.
when you're preparing? Like I know that Bob Zemeckis says he watches The Godfather before he shoots anything.
I watch films incessantly. I like watching films. They're like music to me. So, it's like I love it. They make me happy. They make me want to live. They make me want to get out of bed. It's like great music. So I watch many of the films made at this table repeatedly. They were all inspirations to me. I've been watching recently a David Lean film called Hobson's Choice.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Which, is such a treasure, and it's such a cousin or ancestor of joy, because it's about a woman doing an unlikely thing with her father runs a shoe shop, Charles Lawton, and in Manchester, and she has to she's underestimated, and she has to go out and make herself, and it's a fantastic, perfect film.
So what will your moment in film be?
It depends on what day you ask me, you know what I'm saying? I mean, right now, I loved a sequence I saw last night, because I watch it until it runs out of gas for me, and I'm like, oh, I'm sad, I'm sick of it now. It's no longer new to me. So I have to put it down, and that could be a sequence. I love that sequence when they go and shoot, when Eli Roth shoots that guy. I got 30 seconds to shoot that, whatever it is, 10 seconds to shoot that guy.
yeah.
Can you do it?
Shoot the girl.
Can you do it? I have to.
Boom, bada, boom,
So,
boom,
yes.
boom, boom,
Yeah. So that's really fun when that's fresh. Then you watch it 100 times, and you're like, it's not fresh now, and I have to go watch something else.
Alejandro, what about you?
Wait, no, I'll say what it is. So Hobson's Choice. Sorry, Hobson's Choice. I would say the scene where she takes this guy. Her father says, "You're a spinster. You're done," which is a little bit like De Niro underestimating Jennifer's character. Women get underestimated. Anybody gets underestimated. There's no greater inspiration you can give somebody than to underestimate them. Some people. That's that throws down the gauntlet to them.
Do you feel you've been underestimated at times? I was thinking you had a stretch of 7 years where you had trouble making films.
Yes.
How do you deal with those things as a director?
I feel like if you get the chance to, any artist, I think, can, it's like J.D. Salinger. He wanted to be a great writer. And he was a 25-year-old kid on Park Avenue who had a great voice. But it wasn't until he landed on D-Day and had trauma. He was in every great battle, Battle of the Bulge, the Hurtgen Forest, just eviscerating trauma. And he met Hemingway in Paris, who said to him, "I think you got a good voice, kid." And that meant everything to him. But that made him, that pain and humility. Holden Caulfield is a fractured war veteran. I never understood that with gray hair. That's why he's not just an adolescent. But there's a fractured war veteran that's in all of us that endures what we go through in life. And the more you go through the blood and guts of your life, and you get humbled, which I got humbled, it's a good thing. It makes you more human. It makes you love more stories. You're more open to humanity, whether it's a working class person running a metal garage or someone who's going to do something beautiful and sing. It's just, you got to find the grit of it. So to me, that's what that is.
Cool.
I think that, just taking some points before, when we were talking about film in a way, there's two things that are, I think, important. What has happened in the economy in the world is happening to the film itself. So the 99% and the 1% kind of division, now there's like super expensive films or just a very tiny budget film. Like the middle class or the middle budget films are disappearing. Obviously, the ways we have been, the exhibitors has just obviously chosen the big budget things to be exhibit. So, but that doesn't mean that there's a great diversity for people to watch in cinema. There's a small amount of kind of films that make it there. So all those kind of polarizing things that are happening is affecting film in a way, as a workman kind of access to everything. And at the same time, I think what David is saying, I feel compelled about it, because when you ask me what kind of scene I will have, more than anything, I just remember scenes or moments of film that I quite even now doesn't understand what they meant to me, but they just get me in a place that I couldn't understand what I was feeling, but I felt some revelation in myself. Like Stalker from Tarkovsky, that the other day I saw with my kid, every time that I saw that film, I was just saying how he did that shot, what these mean, why these guys are dressed like that, what is that sound is telling me. So all that mystery that I'm just feeling a revelation of a human experience that connect me with something that I'm not thinking. It's an intuition kind of thing.
Instinct.
When that happened in cinema is when when I met somebody and it reveals something that I have never thought or saw. Those are the moments that for me are very personal, because maybe it doesn't mean nothing to nobody else.
Do you think sequels are, I mean, I know sequels are good for the economy of the film, but do you think sequels are wearing us out a little bit? Is it tiresome? Do sequels become tiresome? I think they do, but you can't blame a studio for wanting to do it because it's financial return, correct?
Yeah, but I could not wait to see Prometheus. I couldn't wait. We were shooting in New Orleans doing Django Unchained, and the entire crew went out to a New Orleans theater to see it because it was Ridley dealing with Alien again, and that was so exciting. We were just counting the days until Friday happened, and then we just took over the theater in mass. I think on a Wednesday or something, because that was our easy day.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying was also good, because and
I've heard you're going to do Blade Runner sequel. Yes.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying is right. To run out of stories and ideas is entirely wrong, because in the head and the capability and the sensitivity of whoever the filmmaker is. So you can make a feature film about a pen, depending on what your vision is. It's just that simple. So any story is a good story. They say, what's your plan? There is no plan. Or like that, I'm going to make a film about blue pens. The biggest single word is vision.
I want to come back to the thing you said about the 99 to 1, because you've gone from making independent films to making, very expensive film.
This is the
Revenant.
first one.
It is.
And last one, maybe.
Okay, that's the issue. What went right, what went wrong?
What went right? Well, you will have to see if something went right. The film will have to say what went right. A lot of things went right. It's just that, we have to fight for them a lot, more than I expect. And anybody of you guys, you have just gone through the horses snow. Mm-hmm. What is that about? I mean, I remember that Clint Eastwood last year when we were in that, he said, you are dealing with horses and not snow. I was offered one of those, and I didn't take it. Sorry for you. And I didn't know. I have never shot a horse in my life. I have nightmares how I'm going to shoot a horse, where I put the camera. They are very big. If I hit it, I cut the hair of the rider. If I put the rider, I lose the head of these guys. I was having nightmares discussing with Chivo how we would shoot horses. I mean, everything in the mountains, in cold weather, in all that, everybody that has been there it's extremely challenging. I'm from a tropical country. So what I'm saying is,
oh my God, I'm hitting that.
Every problem we could have faced, and especially climate, and we were exposed 90% of the time, 97% of the film is exteriors, and in remote locations, in incredibly bad conditions, and everything that we were expecting something to happen, it happened the other thing. So once you are negotiating with the weather, it's like a terrorist. Everything can explode in any moment. So we went through that. And we responsibly, I think all of us has to be making tough decisions. And this film for me, that is the first, all the films that I have done are low budget or middle budget, and I'm very good in the budget because I'm a producer. But it's because this was like rock climbing without a rope. Once we established the rules of the film and the language and the vision and what we want to achieve, we couldn't get out of that. You know what I mean? We cannot change and said, let's go to a blue screen because it will collapse. So we were in the middle, and there's no way back. When you are rock climbing, or you go up or you die. And we couldn't.
Well, one of the things that kind of prepared me because we had a lot of the same issues and same problems. And one of the things that kind of prepared me for that, because you're 100% right, one of the things that prepared me for that was watching a documentary about Apocalypse Now and hearing Vittorio Storaro talking. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Storaro said was about creating an aesthetic, creating a norm, and then once you do that, you can't go back. And they were talking about the Duvall sequence, and not the big action scene, but just when they're talking and everything. Helicopters were in the air. They put helicopters in the air, and they realized that once they did that, they couldn't get them out of the air. All right, it was like the whole thing collapsed if there weren't helicopters flying around all the time. And so that means every time they rolled camera, they had to coordinate with the helicopters and get them flying around and whatever, and create that kind of mayhem. But it was that mayhem that they were trying to capture, and they couldn't just settle down and just do a close-up because the helicopter still had to be doing its thing. I told that to the crew. I'm going, we're going to create this certain thing, and we can't go backwards. You know, if it means when it comes to a certain snowfall that we eventually capture, if that means it takes us 3 months to do this scene because we have to match that snowfall, then that's what it takes.
My feeling is I'm a strategist because I've done so much experience. The most experience I've ever had in my life was 2,000 commercials. Every which way, upside down, in lakes, underwater, in snow. And that's a textbook that you're never going to get in the career as a filmmaker. And so I was so informed by the time I'd finished television commercials that doing a film became physically pretty straightforward because you'd stare at the problem and say, I've got to watch that. You watch the problem coming over the horizon, and if it's a problem, knock its head off before it gets near you. That's how I made commercials. That's why we were very successful.
What was your toughest challenge on The Martian?
None. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, the biggest thing was getting the bloody that screenplay was very, very nice screenplay. I didn't develop it. It was written by Drew. Very good adaptation, a very good book. So once I have that, it's pretty straightforward.
Commander, Mark is dead. We have to go now.
Now you can either accept that, or you can get to work. This will come as quite a shock to my crewmates, and to NASA, and to the entire world. But I'm still alive. Surprise.
Tom, what about you on Danish Girl?
Well, I mean, I you know, things I find strangest about directing is, for me, I find like your principal battles on a daily basis you're fighting, or sometimes your most urgent battles are actually against lack of time and lack of money, lack of resources. And yet all of us find ways to render this fight invisible. So when you see the final film, you're not aware of what the directors were really facing, because the harder you fight it, the more you make it unclear. So for me, I had a screenplay with 184 scenes and 44 days to shoot it. So that was 4 scenes every day. And so I lived intimately with the reality of lack of time, which is, you know, doing 4 or 5 takes at the most, not necessarily having the time to kind of explore everything to the extent that I might like, so having to work very instinctively. It's a strange part of the job, and I think it's often why when you talk to members of the public who don't know the business, they don't understand what you do, because it doesn't seem pressured in the way that you experience the pressure. Just going back to where we started, I mean, the image that came to mind when you said what moment would you pick is the match being blown out in Lawrence of Arabia, that cut from the match blow to the landscape. And I was thinking about what you were saying about what is it that even now, as you're asked that question, that image stays in my head. And as a young child, I experienced that on the big screen in the Prince Charles Cinema in Leicester Square, which is the only cinema in London that played those great movies. There was something so extraordinary about it, but you couldn't explain it or put it into words. It had a mystery that, to this day, when I play that film at that moment in my head, it still seems mysterious. And
have any of you had a moment in your careers where you just were despaired and thought, I'm going to give up and do something else?
I made a space movie, and it's called Sunshine, which is weird, making space movies, because you are in the footsteps of the people who've been there before, principally him. Yes. And I developed this theory because it was so tough defying gravity. Just somehow, actually, things not having gravity is just impossible. And I despaired. And I remember thinking, and then when the film came out and I did all the publicity, I remember having this shtick where I said, I've looked at it, and no director who's ever been in space ever goes back to space unless he's got to do a sequel. And then he's defied it, of course, with Martian. And then he sits there and says it wasn't any problem at all.
But you know, watch Stanley, and when 2001, they begin on a running wheel, you cut outside the ship, and I'm going, hang on, Stanley, where's the wheel? There's no fucking wheel on that thing. There's a ball and a train, and where's the wheel? There is no wheel. So he cheated, and I'm sure he agonized over The wheel gives me gravity. That wheel gives you gravity.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
And the wheel at the outer perimeter, all it has to do is run at 5 miles an hour, and you've got gravity. And he must have agonized over that, because when you come to the outside of the ship, which is fundamentally a white train with a ball on it, I don't think that wheel was in that ball, dude. Okay.
Did you ever meet him, Kubrick?
No, I talked to him. I've got a very nice story about Stanley. I'd finished Blade Runner, and it was a disaster. And my investors were giving me a really hard time. Said, how can you can't end the film with this picking up a piece of origami and looking at the girl walking the elevator, nodding, and bingo, that's it. I said, it's called a film noir. They said, what's a film noir? That was a big not problem. And he said, we have to test this with a uplifting ending. Why do we always want uplifting ending? Uplifting ending where they will go off into the wilderness together. So, well, if they go off into a beautiful wilderness, why do they live in this dystopian environment? All right, I'll do it. So by then I talked to Stanley a few times. I called him up and said, listen, I know you shot the hell out of wherever it was in The Shining. I know you've got 4.5 months of helicopter stuff there because you don't like to go in the air. Can I have some of the stuff because it'll suit me fine? The next day I had 17 hours of helicopter footage from Stanley. So the end of the film in Blade Runner is that Stanley Kubrick's footage going into...
That's incredible.
Yeah. But he said...
You didn't know that?
No, but he said, Winner, you got a vehicle? I said, yeah. What's it long? Oh, shit. Every shot I've got has got a Volkswagen in it. Then he went, oh, what did you shoot? I said, animal feed. Ah, jolly good. When you project mine, it'll look oblong. You'll be fine. Then, a day later, he called me up and said, it's Stanley. I went, what? He said, one other thing. I know you're looking through my footage right now. If you use anything that I use, you can't have it. Got it? I went, okay, boom. That was it. That was Kubrick.
Wow.
Amazing.
I want to go back
And the
to...
romantic ending of that is very magical and beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason I go to the cinemas, for magic.
Well,
And there's
you like
magic
the
even in
countryside?
noir. I love the magic that she's there as Sean Young and that that's something beautiful.
You should have been my producer yesterday.
No, but that film of Kubrick, of Blade Runner, is full of, at least that's a good example of the mystery and the revelations and the atmosphere. That it's not about story. I mean, 2001 is about what? I don't care. It's just I felt an experience that it is this atmosphere and light and film and space make that. And your film is full of those moments, I think.
I want to go back to the question asked, which is, you've had everyone here has had tough times in the film business. Has there been a point where you thought of giving up?
But I think when you ask us all about where we see the business going, maybe
He hasn't had tough times. I really haven't had tough times. We've been like incredibly lucky.
I mean,
No, we're doing all right.
I know some great directors in our town who are friends of mine who have said to me, have come back from rough experiences and said, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. You know what I mean? I understand people going through that, because it can be very, very intense and very challenging, and you can come back and you're exhausted. But I get so much magic and inspiration out of it, and it's such a privilege to make a movie. You get to live in a magic world and create magic, so you pay the price. Everybody pays the price who goes to work, and many people lose the magic, which is a sad thing. And how can they find it again? We get to try to make magic, and that always makes me it gets me excited. And my son, on the other hand, who's 21, lives to go to the movies. You see, he doesn't like watching them on devices. He likes to go out. That's like a whole thing with his girlfriend. He loves going out. He'll go to 2 movies.
Let's get them together.
Good.
Would you make another big budget film after Revenant?
I will do, I don't know. I'm so exhausted now, honestly.
You are.
It's the first time that I have done 2 in a row. I think Ridley is the master of that. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, you never stop working.
Never stop. I don't know how. You do take time.
Yeah, it's usually 3. Well, because I'm always writing my scripts from scratch. So there always is this absolute downtime that built into that, because you get to live a life while you're writing at the same time, but you're incredibly invigorated by doing it and stuff. So that always creates like a 3-year gap between one movie and the next movie.
Yeah, I have been like that, but I started this film before Birdman, so I did Birdman, so then it collapsed, and I physically I cannot even think about any other film in the future.
If you did something else, if you had to do some other career, what would it be?
I can't do nothing.
It's funny. Sometimes people have said to me, if you were on Survivor, you'd be the first person asked to leave the island because they say, "Can you build a house?" I go, "No, but I can tell someone what I want them to do with an Avid." But hopefully, I would stay on Survivor because I would entertain people and tell them stories.
Who in this room would survive the most on Survivor? Well, you would. You have.
Yeah, I mean,
what's it take?
The physicality of doing the job. I love the physicality of the job. And you're right, we're dead lucky to be allowed to do this.
But I don't think you ever lose, I never lose the fear that I'll be back as the 12-year-old who fell in love with being a feature director and not being allowed to do it. It's an incredibly hard thing to get to the place to do it. And in fact, I've always seen Ridley as the man who's mastered being able to keep making films in the most fluent way, and it's incredibly hard. So when you say to us, where's the industry going, what are your worries? I think part of it is always just the desire, the hope that you can keep making films, and the fear that somehow you can't.
Ridley, one question: Do you prepare yourself to do a film? So how you maintain physically fit to get that every year, every day?
I think it's my mum. It's genes. My mum was 5 foot tall, and she was like the sergeant major. I don't know.
But you don't have a rigorous kind of diet, exercise routine that keep you, or
no? I just try and be sensible about what I eat. Bit of yoga.
That's it.
I like red wine. I love vodka. What can I tell you?
I want to go back to if you thought of doing anything else at any point. Quentin, what about you?
Well, I'm probably only going to make 10 movies, so I'm already planning on what I'm going to do.
You said this, so you're going to. Are you seriously only going to do 10?
That's why I'm counting them. That's why
you got 2 more left.
Yeah, 2 more left. Yeah.
Why?
I want to stop at a certain point. I don't.
But what would you do then?
What I want to do basically is I want to write novels and I want to write theater and I want to direct and I want to direct theater. Well, that's how I feel about it.
Same thing.
I got to see how I feel when Hateful Eight is over after I get through going all around the world on it and everything. If I still have the same juice for it. But the next thing I'd like to do is do a theatrical adaptation of Hateful Eight because I actually like the idea of other actors having a chance to play my characters and see what happens from that and everything. So that's where I'm working my way into that time period where I write novels and write film pieces and film books and story novels, but in particularly theater and directing theater.
Well, that's an evolution, so it's good.
Yeah, that's how I look at it.
Have you ever directed theater?
No, never have.
Have you ever written a play?
No, you know everything I've written.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting.
Look, Reservoir Dogs could be put on stage and has been
and
put on stage
Hateful Eight was done
times.
as a stage reading.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you learn from that?
I learned that for the most part, I picked the right actors because the actors, for the most part, that were in that stage reading were the ones in the movie. The other thing that I learned, and this was a big part of my thought process. By doing it, and I don't want to get lost into a technical discussion, but by doing it in 65 millimeter and wanting it to be shown in 70, and so we're making these plans before we even shot the movie. I wouldn't be so confident with the idea of thinking about exhibition that early on if I wasn't that confident with the material. And the script reading really went a long way as far as that's concerned. I mean, in something like Inglourious Basterds and Django, you can read it as a script, and I'm very proud of it as almost as a piece of literature, not as a blueprint. But I still have to make it. There still is I have to still figure it out. It's not figured out. It's not for sure that I'm going to pull it off. There is a finding it in the course of making it. That's not the case with this. With the case of Hateful Eight, it was right there. I mean, if I had those actors and we did it in a little theater in Santa Monica Boulevard, 99 seats, it would kill. It would be terrific. If I did it at the Mark Taper Forum, it would be great. If I did it at the Brooks Atkinson Theater, it would be great. If I shot it on 16 millimeter, it would be great. I'm not saying the movie's great. I'm just saying that I like the material. So I had a confidence in it. And so why not do it big?
This here is Daisy Domergue. She's wanted dead or alive for murder. When that sun comes out, I'm taking this woman to hang. Is there anybody here committed to stopping me from doing that?
Well. Looks like Minnie's haberdashery is about to get cozy for the next few days.
Yes, it does.
Do you have thoughts of doing something else?
I would also be a writer. I was a writer before I was a filmmaker.
Screenwriter?
No, I wanted to write fiction. I was always a fiction writer, and that's what it was. My love. My father and mother met in the mailroom at Simon & Schuster. My mother was